Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 1 minute at a time. I'm Sean Slater.
And I'm his sister, Caroline.
And today we're watching minute 15, which starts Miles trying on some new pants and ends a minute later as he meets as he learns the new girl's name. Or does he?
Tries on some new pants. Sorry, I had to mock that for a second. For those keeping track, I have named this minute Miles hits puberty and is a man.
Yeah, this definitely. I really like this minute and how it shows, like they do a good job bouncing between like uncomfortable Miles and him kind of like trying to play it cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the very first thing, the first thing I want to touch on is at the very beginning of the minute, the time lapse ends, and I just want to touch on how good the time lapses are in this movie. There's a couple scenes with them, but like the animators were just commenting on how hard time lapses are to do, because it's not like a regular time lapse where you just record for 20 hours and then cut it down to X number of minutes. You actually have to like fake it, because you're not animating as long of a shot and then just taking out parts of it. You just animate the parts of the time lapse, and so you have to know like, oh, how long should this be on, or how should this get cut? And so yeah, they do a very good job of making the time lapses look very well, or look very, very good.
They're very good. I also just imagined animators, it's more specifically hand-drawn animators, because the headache it would have been to have to animate like an entire day in hand drawing and all of these like little details and stuff, and then have to cut some of that out for a time lapse. Ugh. I know this isn't hand-drawn animation, but that's just what popped into my head. But like, could you imagine if animators had to animate all of that and then cut it?
Yeah, that would be a huge, like, almost waste of time.
Huge waste of time. Those animators would have gone insane.
Yeah, it's a good thing they, don't do it that way, but then that also just makes it more challenging to make it look good.
Yeah. And like you said, they do an amazing job of making it look good.
And then, so once the time lapse is done, it's the morning, and we see Miles get out of bed and put on his pants, but
they're quite a bit shorter.
Yeah, he already had them kind of like rolled up, and they were a little bit high, but this is clearly like, couple inches shorter.
It's a good like 3-4 inches above his sock.
Yeah. Whereas before it was, halfway up his sock. Also, the as we have another close up of his sock, and the sock he's wearing changes.
What?
Yeah, he in the time lapse at night, we see the sock that he's wearing is it's the lines at the top of it, it's 2 red stripes, whereas this one that he's wearing now is a solid blue stripe. So
oh geez, he changed his socks at some point in the middle of the night.
I mean, he changed his sock, because it's still only a single sock that he has on.
You're right.
And it's on the same foot, so like it's not like, oh, he put on the other sock, found the other sock because his foot got cold,
put it on and lost it,
and then the other one fell off. But no, this is the same foot.
I am curious to see if that was like an most likely it's an animation mistake. But part of me is kind of wondering, like, did they do that on purpose? Because there's so many things in this movie that are, like, done on purpose. Crap, not really. Again, probably an animation mistake. I like to think that they did it on purpose.
Yeah.
For some reason. I don't know what. I want to say, part of the reason I named this minute as it is because it has one of my favorite lines in the movie. Well, the minute has 2 of my favorite lines of the movie, but it has, in this part says one of them. when Miles puts on the pants and it's like, did my pants get shorter? And then he just says, I think I hit puberty. And both he and Genki's face get this like wide look of shock. Like, did he really just say that?
Yeah.
And before we go to the room, I noticed that like 13 seconds, there was a frame of Genki looking back at Miles like, did he just say that? And then going back to his work as if nothing.
Yeah, he looks terrified. He's like, nope, just play it cool. Go
He's
back
like,
to work. Pretend
what?
you didn't actually hear
He's
that.
like, what did you say? Never mind.
And then I was like, oh yeah, I should have kept that to myself.
Yeah. But that it showing that sheet, we get a good view of the room. So do you want to talk about what you've seen in the room?
Yeah, so the one thing I wasn't able to figure out is there's two posters on the wall. One
Okay,
I'm guessing
let me
is
bring these up
Genki's.
because I noticed the posters and you didn't.
Yeah, well, I mean I noticed them. I couldn't figure out what they are.
Yeah.
Like
So
they're both.
the one
Go
on
ahead.
the right seems to be Genki's, so it's on Genki's side of the room. And it looks like it says water, and it's like a band poster.
Yeah, and the bottom of it looks like it says, you know, the benevolent December maybe, but I was not able to figure out what that was at all. Like my Google foo failed me. And then same with and then the same thing with Miles's poster on the left, or you know what I'm assuming to be Miles's poster because it's on the left hand side
It's
of
on the
the
left
room.
hand side. It seems to be a rap poster. And the reason I think that because it has that parent explicit.
I mean,
On the
that's
side.
not
I know it's
necessarily
not-
mean it's rap.
It means rap,
Just
but
means it's got explicit content.
yeah, but it's very common on rap albums. And also the look itself, it looks like so the poster is of an African American man just kind of standing there, and it looks like an album cover and just kind of standing there, and the way he's standing is a very relaxed traditional hip hop stance.
Yeah, and you know, trying to Google, music album cover 28 guy. Not good.
I think you'll get a lot of results, but not an answer.
Yeah. I wasn't able to find either of those. But I mean, I'm not very familiar with music, and music like album covers and whatnot.
There's very few, and it's usually with specific artists that I'm... Actually, it's really only two. I'm very familiar with Linkin Park album covers because I grew up with Linkin Park, so makes a lot of sense. And then I'm quite familiar with Panic at the Disco album covers because I love Panic at the Disco. So those are like the only two bands that I ever give a crap about the album covers on.
Yeah. And I don't really know what most album covers look like.
Yeah.
There's a couple here and there that I'm like, oh, I know what that is, but I wouldn't be able to tell you names or albums.
Something else I noticed in this shot, moving on a little bit, is something I feel like you can relate to is that Genki has 3 screens set up.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. I don't know how he works like that.
Because it's just 2 monitors and a laptop.
Well, no, that's fine. That's how my work setup's the same way. Is the 2 monitors.
Sean's
and
work
laptop.
setup is a like the Bat Cave.
No, I mean work.
Oh, okay.
I have 2 monitors and then I plug my laptop
Okay.
into it to function as a third monitor. But his again, it definitely looks like he's still working on like the text on the screen looks like code layout, and so he's definitely programming something. Again, we get a much better look at it, and it has that typical like code kind of text on the screen. But his left monitor, I believe it is just mirroring what's on his laptop screen.
I noticed
You
that.
can see like when the text is going up, it's just mimicking what's on there, kind of, or at least mimicking part of what's on the screen. But also, you can see his right hand monitor a little bit better in the previous minute, but it's not high enough for the laptop screen. Like the top of the laptop screen is going to block off the bottom part of the that secondary monitor screen. So like I don't know why he has that plugged in. It should just be somewhere else.
Maybe he uses it for like video games or something.
Yeah, but it just seems like a waste of energy to have the monitor plugged in and not be using it in a functional way. And then the other thing is, I don't like his laptop is scooched up to the edge of the table, so his trackpad is just hanging off all willy nilly over the side of the side of the computer. So like, I don't know how he's using that at all. It's
Well, he might have a laptop like mine, which has a touch screen on it.
yeah,
So I
guess,
actually
but
don't
still,
use my
like
trackpad that often. Every now and again, depending what I'm doing, I mostly just touch the screen.
yeah, but even just the fact that it's hanging off the edge like makes it a little bit unstable. Like if his wrists come down at all, or his hand bumps that, it's gonna flip the laptop up and not gonna be a
Yankee
fun
has
time.
proper typing posture. Did you not see him?
Yeah, it's still it bothers me. Like, why would you have it hanging off the edge like that?
Yeah.
It makes me uncomfortable.
I don't like a setup failure.
Yeah.
See, I didn't
Yeah,
even
and then
notice
we-
all that. I just noticed like, oh, he has 3 screens going on, and then it was like, Sean's gonna have a lot to say. Had even more than I thought. Well then.
And then we go from that scene to Miles walking down the hallway.
Okay, hold on. I have to point this out. So at 19 seconds, it's showing him trying to like fix his pants.
Yeah.
Did you notice those super small lockers in the background?
Oh yeah, the ones on the bottom there. Yeah.
What? Like, I'm even thinking like, oh, maybe they're for like kids in wheelchairs or something. I'm like, no, that's even too low for them. What the heck are those lockers used for? Like, that seems ridiculous for them.
Yeah, it seems like they might be like, oh, maybe if someone who's in sports or something might get those lockers to like stick their extra bags in potentially.
I guess, but it seems just so random in the middle of the hallway. Like,
Yeah, it's definitely like they're like, well, we have a little bit of space below this window. Let's throw some lockers in here.
let's throw some cubbies down there.
Yeah, it's
And they
very-
have locks on them. Clearly, like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, who uses these? And I'm like, okay, maybe, okay, I could see like people in like wheelchairs or handicapped in that sort of way maybe need that. And I'm like, yeah, that still seems too small for them because now they have to bend over their wheels. Like that just seems abnormally low and like ridiculous size for a locker.
Yeah, it's definitely too low for even anybody sitting down to be able to to get to them.
I mean, I guess if they have any like little people at the school, but even then, that just seems weird.
No, that's
like it's
that only comes up to like not even a hip height on
a little person.
on on like the top of the locker only comes up to hip height on the students in the background.
Yeah, it's such a weird lockers. I just had to point that out. I'm like, who uses these?
Yeah. The one good thing to note though is Miles is wearing his blue socks.
Oh, good.
His sock has the blue stripe on them, so
So he didn't
either
change
he
his
didn't
socks,
change
is
his-
what you're telling me.
yeah, either he didn't change them or he just is smart and has a bunch of socks of the same style, so that he doesn't have to worry about finding the socks that match explicitly.
That is actually pretty smart, but still.
Yeah, and you'll notice the right before or the student using the locker next to those really weird short lockers is none other than the new girl. Is none other than Gwendolyn. Yeah, she's only you notice it because you can see her ballet slippers, but she's only on screen for like maybe a second, and like part of that Miles is in front of her.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, you can see her at the locker, getting stuff from her locker early in the morning.
Yeah, I totally missed that.
I only noticed that when I was going back to look at I actually noticed his
His socks. You
again.
went to look at his
No,
socks?
his shoes untied.
Uh-huh.
still untied, and it's like I was just making note of it being his left shoe again. I went it. I went back to check to see if it was his, or to see which shoe it was, because I wonder, like, it's his left shoe, and I'm pretty sure that's the same shoe that's been untied.
Yeah.
So like, does he just have something against his
Left
left
shoe?
shoe? Does he always pick? Yeah. Does he always pick that shoe? Is it just whichever foot he leans down to first? He doesn't bother tying the other one. Um,
Is it always the
yeah,
left shoe?
I think so. I didn't explicitly check the other
Okay.
minutes, but I believe just from memory, I believe it's the left shoe that's always untied.
Uh, that's really cool. This actually, a little after this, like literally, you bring up a gag you actually told me about before I saw the movie. And it was even funnier when I saw it in person, which is when Miles goes, why is the voice in my head so loud? And there's text boxes popping up next to him. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because you loved that gag when we first talked about the movie.
Yeah, so we get the captions and the inner monologue, and the yellow boxes start appearing, and again, this is really when Miles first realizes, like, oh, something's different, outside of just the, oh, I grew a bunch of
I hit
inches.
puberty.
Yeah. And we get the text boxes coming up with what his background, or what his inner monologue is, and it's definitely that, like, oh, the more of that language of comics coming through in the movie. And I remember seeing when watching the trailer, it had a couple of shots where the text boxes were going on screen, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. This will be neat if they do it in a do it in a sparing way, and intelligent way of how do you do the, like, inner monologue, but also keep it sort of grounded, and yeah, so this was really cool to see.
Yeah, you definitely with the boxes you have to make sure you have a careful balance of show don't tell, and I can easily seeing because movies are a very visual medium, so you tell a lot of storytelling through visuals. And in comics, it's a mix of the two, so you have to find that proper balance between it. And I think it could easily be overdone because a lot of times in comics you still have the text or the internal monologue boxes even when they're showing things.
Yeah, and the other cool thing with these is that they're placed in 3D space. So, like, he
Yeah.
walks in front of them, and, like, students, they don't interact with them, but um, they definitely, like, can walk in front of and behind where they are.
Yeah, and the one thing I noticed too is around 25 seconds, not long after this, why is the voice in my head so loud? Miles turns around and says, "What?" And like, it almost looks like he can see the boxes. And I'm like, can he?
Yeah, it's a very, like, I think it's more just him trying to look around and see, like, is there something around here, like, amplifying my inner voice? But it would be really funny if you could see the
I
the dialogue boxes,
I
like,
think both are
appear.
possible. Shall we move into him
Um,
bumping?
there's
Okay.
there's another thing, is a couple minutes ago I brought up there was, like, a number 5 on the car.
Oh yeah.
There's a
Is
number
there?
11 on this backpack, and so we either missed 6 numbers, um, like, his backpack has 11 and it looks like something else is covering it, but it's pretty centered in the frame, and so I didn't catch any other numbers in
Maybe
any other
it's
scenes.
yeah. I haven't caught any either. Maybe it's code.
Maybe. Um, we'll have to see if we can decode all of the numbers as they appear.
Yeah.
Um,
I hope you're keeping track of all of them because I haven't been writing them down.
yeah.
Because you usually catch them, and I don't. I don't always catch them. Like,
Yeah.
huh.
One thing I do want to touch on is the font that's used for the text boxes,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of touch on a little bit of the history of the comic book font, which like people usually think of that as Comic Sans,
Yeah.
which was actually just developed by Microsoft in the 90s
Oh.
to mimic the comic book font, but it's not exactly the same.
Really?
As this, yeah, it's similar, but there are some small differences.
So does this one have its own like font title?
Comic book font, not really. Like
Okay.
there's some slight, yeah. It's mostly because so originally it was all hand drawn.
Yeah.
Like all of the lettering was done by hand.
Yeah.
And they used specific pen head to keep the strokes consistent. So like if you look at like Times New Roman or
Mm-hmm.
a lot of fonts like on O's, the top and bottom will be like a little bit thinner than
The sides.
the sides, or
Yeah.
different letters will have, like, depending on where the stroke starts and stops, it'll have a different width throughout, whereas with this font it's typically done where everything has the same pretty much the same stroke size, and also like the difference with Comic Sans and comic book font is Comic Sans has like a lowercase, and comic book font is almost always written in capital
uppercase.
letters.
Yeah.
And that's partly to just make it all of these sort of like capital letters, consistent stroke size, is to make it easier to read when it was printed on cheaper paper, because like the ink would kind of like expand out a little bit and like bleed into the paper, and so having it was not having lowercase letters. It also kept the line heights the same size, like a consistent size, and you were able to make them a little bit smaller because you didn't have things hanging down over the edge of the page with like Y and G that goes below the bottom line.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's also probably easier to make sense of like what's a P and what's a G.
Yeah, it makes it partly so that they don't bleed into each other and just make it look like but also because you can then decrease the size of the width or the height of the lines and be able to fit more lines into the same spot or the
That's
same
really interesting.
space.
Huh, that's really interesting.
And it's printed on like that yellow background is what very old comics would, or older comics would print their dialogue boxes, or not their monologue boxes and their caption boxes on, was like it looked like that, where it was the yellow background with the black text. And now in more modern comics, it'll be usually if there's different characters on the page, like the one I can always think of is in like Batman or Batgirl or Nightwing comics. They'll stick the little like logo of whoever is talking next to it, and then like kind of color that panel to be their colors. So like Batgirls will have a slightly more purplish tinge to it, whereas Nightwings will have like a bluer tinge to it.
Batman's is just black with white text.
No, his is like a dark
Black
purple
with black
blue.
text. Anyway, back to what you were
Yeah,
saying.
and then Miles is walking down the hallway, and it shows him walk back into the new girl, and
Again, like the reason we know that she was at her locker early, which how did she get there so fast? Like she got there.
yeah.
She got there fast, but you clearly saw her at her locker, because it's
she
again
sprinted.
the bell issues. Yeah, maybe there's like it looks like maybe she walked past. I don't know, because she's facing the opposite way. How did she do that?
I think there might be another hallway that she might have walked
See,
down.
that's what I'm thinking.
Because like when we get the front shot of Miles like trying to fix his pants and whatnot, we don't see her in the background anymore. And then like a student walks in front of him and he's further down the hallway. So I imagine he just took his time
Oh, maybe.
getting down the hallway.
Maybe.
But also, the one thing I noticed was that there's a student that walks in front of him, and then he jumps up further down the hallway. So he could have taken his time getting through the hallway. But what I noticed was it looks like he bumps into her from the wrong way, assuming that like cut is or that him turning around backwards and then bumping into her is supposed to be the same bit, because he's still looking down the hallway.
See, yeah,
but
that's how I took it.
there's a 3 on the wall, and like it looks like this should be the right hand side because the wall keeps going and then it like cuts out into the courtyard, so it looks like, or into that area. And so it looks like he's on entering the open space area from the right hand side, but then he bumps into her from the left hand side, and it looks like he's looking down the left hand hallway. Now we don't see the big blue number written on the side of the wall, so I don't know, like it could still be that, but it's definitely like a right hand wall that is painted on. And he bumps into her from the left hand side, and he's also a lot further like into the courtyard.
Yeah.
I would think, like, you don't see the girls standing by the same wall. Like, not really sure where they were supposed to be standing, if the wall behind the stairs juts out a little bit more or what. But
yeah.
Yeah, he definitely, like, I'm still not 100% clear what this open space sort of looks like. What this main entranceway
Yeah,
looks
I'm
like.
with you there. The layout of that is a little strange. But we see him bump into the new girl.
Yeah,
So let's talk
and
about
this
that.
is where we sort of learn her name.
This is also where my other favorite line in this minute is, where, first off, Miles being smooth.
Yeah,
and I made sure I added extra O's in my notes to make sure he actually was not. He was very clunky.
Yeah, I do like he sees her and then he starts sweating a lot, and he goes,
like,
why am I sweating
so
so much? And then she immediately asks, why are you so sweaty?
It's a puberty thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said, like, he immediately, like, he says it so casual, and he's like, I don't know why I said that.
Yeah, he starts rambling.
Yeah, and then this is where my other favorite line, also in my title, he's like, I mean, I went through puberty. I'm a man. And he, like, lowers his voice, his eyes wide. I love Miles. And all of his awkward glory.
And this, like, being really sweaty kind of in the alternate scene from Wednesday, where he's having the nightmares, it explicitly shows him, like, waking up in a cold sweat, and, like, his sheets got a sweat stain on it from how sweaty he was. So it's still kind of like they bring that through where he's just extra sweaty right now.
Yeah. I do like how they, like, it still works even without it, because it's like, he's clear, like, they showed in an earlier scene that, like, he kind of digs this girl.
Yeah, it's definitely a mix between like, oh, the new like his new spider powers, how his body's changing that way, and not because of puberty, but because of getting powers.
No, Sean, he clearly said it's a puberty thing.
Oh, yeah, you're right. No, he already went through puberty. He's a man now.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I want to touch on his, like, oh, I went through puberty, or, it's a puberty thing. I already went through puberty, and tying back in with his, like, it is really funny looking at how short his pants are, Um,
Yeah.
it doesn't look nearly as bad as when he first walked in, but or first put them on in the morning. But that's probably just because he pulled his socks up extra high to try
Yeah.
to hide it.
Yeah, I don't think he uncuffed his pants. I don't
No,
know
he
if
didn't.
I don't know. I wonder if he can't, because I know there are a
Yeah.
few like uniforms where they actually stitch them cuffed up, so you actually can't.
I don't
uncuff
think
them.
so because everybody else has
Are they
has
uncuffed in the others?
theirs
Okay, I didn't know.
just unrolled. So I imagine he just rolled them up because that's like the style
It's like it's
that
a
he
choice.
enjoys. But I can definitely remember between like 6th and 8th grade,
Oh my
I grew
gosh, we
like
could not
6 inches
keep
or
pants on you.
so, and so by the time I bought pants, and by the time I would get around to wearing them, like a week and a half, 2 weeks, or probably longer than that, but a little bit later, they were already too short for me. Even
Yeah.
though when we bought them, they were the right height.
Yeah, I think that's when you just started wearing shorts all the time.
Yeah, because those would like you can have like an inch or two play with shorts, and it doesn't really matter as much as with pants.
Yeah.
And so I just gave up on pants.
Yeah, I
at that
remember. Mom was so frustrated with that.
But it's definitely like I can see him pulling up his pants, realizing, oh, I've grown a couple inches. It must be puberty. Um,
I had a similar problem, where I had quite a few of my pants, but especially like quite a few of my skirts, where I just launched in height, and like a lot of my skirts went from like knee length to me not being allowed to wear them to school. Because it's like it has to be fingertip length, and it's like these are fingertip length. Oh, they are not anymore. These are like at my wrist. Yeah, I just kind of
were
like,
fingertip length.
I swear they were. They were like my go-to skirt for.
Yeah, and like it was a lot easier for you to just be like, oh no, these are capris now.
Yeah, it's like, oh no,
if they
that's
came
the
up-
style of the jean.
Yeah. And then I really liked the way Miles like was able to recover from him after like getting over this like his self shock of being like, why did I just say I'm a man?
He's like, why did I say
hey,
that like that?
Yeah, he's like, hey, we're both new here, and like
That's something we have in common.
he really knows how to turn on the charm.
Yeah, that's his
when
Uncle
he
Aaron.
needs to. Yeah. And then like immediately when he's like, what's your name? And Gwen's just like, Gwen, I shouldn't give him my real name.
It's like, yeah, shout out to the voice actress here. It's Haley Steinfeld, I think it is.
I believe so.
Steinfeld? You may have to correct me later when we do get around to talking about her. Shout out to her, because she really did my name's Gwen, like just beautifully, in my opinion. So obviously we know her name is not Gwenanda, although Miles hears Gwanda, which I think is sweet. It's like she clearly said an E in there, but okay.
Yeah. And I like how she's like, yeah, it's African. And then he just kind of like looks at her and
but it cuts there, so like we don't even get the rest of the
Yeah.
excuse yet.
and like you can tell she's like, wait, no, I gotta
It's like,
explain.
play this off. Think about it.
I'm clearly, I'm clearly not
We don't
African.
look African.
Yeah. Yeah, but she does her like quick kind of recovery, or the beginning of her recovery is really good.
Yeah. It's fun to see her starting to stumble after Miles has stumbled.
Yeah. Another quick sidebar that I have, I noticed the clock in the background, and it says it's 7:40,
My
which
God.
is, that's 10 minutes before or 10 minutes after what Miles had woken up to, at the beginning of the week. And he's already like dressed and ready to go to school, or dressed and at the school, whereas like before he was like quickly scrambling getting on, which means he's at school like, I don't know, 45 minutes early.
Well, he also
when his,
lives
like,
at
first
he's
class
also
begins.
like at the dorm, like at the school's
Well,
dormitory now.
but that's
so
what I'm
probably
saying
easy.
is like
Yeah.
he's 45 minutes early. Like he didn't get to school until like 8:30
Well, maybe.
on the Monday, and now it's partway
Yeah.
through the week, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna get to school 45
Here's a
minutes
theory.
early.
Here's a theory. maybe on that first day to like get kids moved back in, they move classes back.
No, because this is just like the weekend. Like it's just he
Oh,
the
good
way
point.
he stays
Good
at the
point.
school is he's only at the school during the week and then
You're
goes
right.
home on the
Okay,
weekends.
good point.
So because we were already in like the second week of school.
You're right.
Um,
Well, third week. Third
so
week.
well, yeah, we had already had 2 weeks of school, and so
Okay,
it
good
was
point.
just yeah, maybe they have like a 0th period or first period before school actually begins.
Or maybe they offer breakfast.
Yeah, maybe. And he just already had it on the way, and that's a
Or he was headed to it,
possibility. Yeah,
depending where they have it. Like if it's in like the school cafeteria or something.
yeah. But I just, thought that was kind of funny.
That is funny.
But yeah, so I wanted to bring up a little bit of Gwen's actual backstory.
Gwanda, you
Gwanda.
mean?
Yeah, no, Gwen Stacy, who, this is her real introduction, sort of. But one thing is that in the animators commentary, they keep calling her Wanda, and that's because her like Riggs code name was just Wanda, and so they'll be like, oh yeah, and then Wanda did this. They're like, actually, we mean Gwen, because they pulled it from that Gwanda joke, which I thought was really funny. Is they just call her Wanda. But yeah, Gwen Stacy was introduced in Amazing Spider-Man 31 in 1965, and she was an undergrad with Peter at Empire State University, and they I don't know how quickly they started dating, but like she quickly became Peter's friend, and then they started dating, and she was like Peter's first love in the story at the time. And then they did in the early 70s, in 1973, there was a story called The Night Gwen Stacy Died, and it was Amazing Spider-Man 121 and 122, so 90 90 issues of her being around. They went and killed off Gwen Stacy, and this was like a massive deal at the time because she was such an integral character. Like, you didn't, no one was ever killed when they were that close.
Unless they were used for like, oh, you're the reason you're gonna become a superhero. Kill the parents.
Yeah, well, but like that's the thing, is they were never that important to the story. Like they were never a main character. They were just introduced to be, fridged then. And yeah, so it was this really big deal, and like she's always usually one of the ones, like, there's only like 3 people that ever stay dead in comics, and it's Uncle Ben, Gwen Stacy, and then Batman's parents. Guess that's technically 4, but
you're right.
but like that's, she, for the next 30, 40, 50 years, she was kind of one of those characters that just never really came back. There was times when she came back, but it was like, oh, it's a clone of her or something, and then that clone would end up getting killed off. But yeah, the writers decided to do it because they felt that, like, oh, her and Peter's relationship was going, not too fast, but was like too far along, and they didn't want him to like get married yet. So they're like, well, guess we got to kill her.
Time to die.
Yeah, and then that's when they brought in Mary Jane, and started like hooking them two up. But yeah, and she also the other interesting thing is she gets killed with a fight with the Green Goblin in that storyline, and then we saw Peter fighting Green Goblin in the beginning of the movie.
Obviously, she didn't stay dead because she's in this movie.
Yeah.
Too. There's that. There's that
In
aspect
this
as
one,
well.
well, we don't know if she died in this movie yet. Is there anything you have to say about her background? Any
About
questions
Gwen?
you have? Anything? Yeah. Or just her origin or anything I might be able to answer.
Not really. More just like I found it interesting how like okay, so this is kind of so in the Tobey Maguire movies, they focus more on MJ.
Yeah, she's not introduced at all in those movies.
No,
Really,
like
I think
I don't even think they really reference her either.
no.
Yeah.
There might be like some passing references, but yeah,
Yeah.
his movies are definitely
They're definitely
the
focused on
MJ
MJ.
movies.
And then I found it interesting with the Andrew Garfield that they did do Gwen Stacy.
Yeah, and I liked
Emma Stone.
yeah, Emma Stone's portrayal of her in that movie. I also really I enjoyed the Andrew Garfield movies.
Yeah,
I thought they were fun.
I only saw the first one, and um, I'm not the biggest Emma Stone fan overall. I don't really think she's that good of an actress personally. But I will say that the Spider-Man movies, her Gwen Stacy was actually one of the first time I saw. It was the first time I saw a character and not Emma Stone acting.
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds, but that's like a thing. I'm still not in love with the Garfield movies, but that's just more of a personal preference. Though I do see why people like them.
Yeah, and in the second one they pull
they do
sort
kill
of
her
go
off,
into the
don't
night
they?
she died. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things they touched on is her dad also gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
And so she sort of dies thinking that it's Peter's fault, like, or not Peter's fault, it's Spider-Man's fault, and doesn't know that. I don't remember if she knows that he's Peter at that point, but she kind of dies thinking that he was the one that killed her dad.
Oh.
And so there was this sort of like, oh, she died hating Peter / Spider-Man, even though he wasn't the one that did it.
Yeah. It's also interesting. Now I haven't seen Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies yet. I just haven't. But they also seem to be focusing on MJ in this one. They don't really seem to be any sort of Gwen Stacy references.
Yeah, and Gwen's also talked about like she's usually one of the primary figures pointed to as like, oh, women's treatment in comics, and how they're always, you know, refrigerated and pushed to the side and treated poorly just to use as motivation for the for like the male hero, and like, okay, you gotta get motivated now because you know this
like
happened.
A damsel in distress, sort of.
Yeah. And then Jay has fallen into that like tropes a lot, where she's just the you know, the damsel that gets kidnapped for Peter to save, and they've gotten a bit better with it in more recent times, but it still isn't you know, perfect.
Yeah, it's yeah. I've definitely have caught that here and there. I guess I'm like, yeah, I can easily see that, and I do see that example pointed out a lot. I have noticed it get a little better with more of the female heroes, but like it's still a bit of a trope.
Yeah, and like that was a big
even in
complaint.
like movies, I remember I've had a conversation with a few people who've even pointed out like Black Widow has no character. Everything she has done in those Avengers movies has been for someone else or their development, never for her own.
Yeah. And that was a big complaint in Amazing Spider-Man 2, was like, oh, you're just gonna kill her off again. Like, you know, we've gone over this trope a bunch of times. We don't need to rehash this. Like, we can change this story.
Yeah, it's
yeah. Yeah, so that's all I have for this minute.
Yeah, that's all I really have for this minute as well.
Then join us next Monday, where we look at minute 16 and see what happens between Miles and Gwanda.
Gwanda.
Yeah. If you want to reach out to us, feel free to contact us. Or if you want to see more of us, feel free to follow us on Twitter at SpiderVerseMin, or on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, Spiderverse Minute. And if you want to shoot us an email, feel free to at podcast@spiderverseminute.com. Thank you for joining us this week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.